Welcome to this very special edition of the Author's Voice with KAJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us Rodney Miles, self-publishing effort expert, consultant, and provider of author services. 14 years of experience. He's helped create and publish over 300 books for clients and help launch careers for authors and speakers, including self-help, business, memoir, fiction, and children's book. And in his book, The Book Dude's Guide to Self-Publishing the Modern Author, he writes about his experiences and methods anyone can follow in his latest book. So let's dive into the story behind Rodney's story. Welcome to the show, Rodney.
Thanks so much for having me back. It's great to see you again.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the KJ, the Author's Voice with KJ. And it's very nice to have you. Earlier having you on the KJ Masterclass. So, Rodney, let's talk about a bit of about your journey. About how did you come into this whole self-publishing stuff, and also author services and all.
Good question. I started over when I was 40, and I'm 55 now. Happened to grow up where I just sort of had the idea that being an artist was hard or impossible or something like that, and learned that's really not the case. You end up, if you're lucky, you end up back where you kind of should be anyway. And through some fortunate failures, because you learn the most from your failures, and I can see those milestones that really changed my thinking, changed what I was doing in life. If you're lucky, you end up where you should have been in the first place. And for me, that was with books, for sure. So at 40, the real estate bubble burst in Florida, and I had to make a decision. And my father was pushing me to start writing professionally. And I started at a penny a word on a platform called Elance, which is Upwork now. You can still do the same thing, and it's very easy to get into freelancing. And I like to support people doing that also, as much as I can. I like to talk about that. I've considered putting a book out on that to help people freelance, or a group or something like that. But that got me started, and I early on realized, 40 is a great age because you see things a little differently. You see things a little more clearly. And I think when I had the opportunity to write for a living, I took it very seriously, and I'd learned some important lessons by that point in my life. Like, I treated every project like it was my dream project, no matter what I was getting paid. And I was able to quickly put together a portfolio. And I really pretty quickly, in the first 6 months, ended up with some more long-term clients that grooved me right into being a freelancer anyway, and doing various things in writing. And then you kind of find your niche. I worked with a group of writers early on, actually, and we all kind of went our separate ways when the group we were part of dissolved. And the ones of us, it seems, who really continued in writing were the ones who chose a niche. And for me, that was self-publishing, which is kind of a large niche. I had friends that went into health writing or a particular type of writing. But for me, it was self-publishing because I liked the whole process. I liked the planning, the writing, the editing, the design, doing cover designs, still book design. I nerd out on doing things like that, and it's very gratifying. And 15 years later, I've been able to help a whole lot of people do it. And finally, a few years ago, wrote my first book on self-publishing, which I think I don't think it's the only book you should read on self-publishing. I guess it could be. In fact, I recommend other people that influenced me all the time. And that's the beauty of books. You can pick up 5 and choose 1 or 2 from those that suit you best. But I really do think my book is designed to get somebody up to speed on what the self-publishing and what the publishing industry is like today for self-publishers, which is very important. One little tip in there can save you a lot of headache with publishers and definitions and some of the basic things, but also how to put a book out that's as professional as anything else you'd see on the bookshelves, because it's a level playing field now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
Long answer.
yeah. So why this? This particular book. What's the inspiration? The book Dude's Guide to Self-Publishing. Tell us a bit about this story.
That's a great question. I don't think I've been asked that before. You see some books on self-publishing, the covers normally have a book or a big pencil or a rocket ship, uh, which is all fine. It's all appropriate. I had gotten to where, and I may or may not even be violating some of my own rules for cover design, but I wanted to, except for one. Well, for example, the book should have contrast. The cover it should be a striking image that gets your attention, and it should accurately set the expectations for what's in the book. It should fit your genre as well. Those are very, very important things. The other thing that I think is just as important, that it needs to be included and might not always be included, is you as the author should love your cover. If you love your cover and you love your book, you're going to promote it more and you're going to be happy with it years and years into the future. So I wasn't so worried about expressing with a picture of a book or a pen or something like that, that this was a book about books. But I wanted to sell the lifestyle, because mine is a little bit different approach. There are a lot of books out there on self-publishing geared for the business person, geared for the professional, geared for someone who is going to not necessarily sell a lot of copies of their book, but use their book to leverage into other things, like to sell consulting or speaking, or as an extended business card for their practice. It's all very legitimate. It's all fine. But for me, that's just one niche in the market. It's a niche I've served. It's usually, if you get into self-publishing, the niche that you'll serve first, because that market deems getting a book out as an investment in their business. So it makes a lot more sense for them to spend money and invest in a book for pretty rapid returns. A lot of people will, sell a speaking gig for $5,000 or sell a consulting package for $10,000 right when the book is out, or it gets them onto shows and gives them media opportunities that help them sell other services. I wanted to appeal just as much to people who are looking for the lifestyle that I portray on that cover, which is my goal. And I've realized it in part. I live 2 blocks from the beach now, but that's why I got into being an author. That cover might not embrace all the intellectual pursuits that I am interested in and that I hope to really dive deeper with into the future as I go. But that's more than anything, that author lifestyle. And if you're somebody who's into that kind of author lifestyle, then I'm probably the dude for you.
You are the dude for a lot of authors, indeed. So I want to understand what is in that book. What is it? In a nutshell, if you can say, okay, this is the book. Now, one can understand it's for authors, but what is in this book? And what is the message that you wanted to convey through this whole book itself?
Yeah, good question. And it's an important question. I actually haven't seen this in other books now that I think about it. There are some, and I recommend other people's books all the time, especially there are those that get into sales funnels and other aspects that you might encounter when you become an author, and they're very handy. This is planned to be the first book in a series of at least 3. And I've got that broken down into 3 stages of a publishing cycle. So the first is book creation. The second is platform development, where you have a website and you've got a sort of an author machine that will help you grow as an author. And then the third is the publicity, or better to say, the strategic growth, the things that you can do in a concentrated manner to grow your book sales and your author career more quickly. So believe it or not, this book, it should probably be called Book Zero, because this precedes all three of those stages. I do talk in this book, I felt obligated to, and I wanted to, about what I call the 10 stages of the book creation cycle. So I do touch on and explain these 10 potential facets of what you'll be doing. And what I mean by that is that includes things like writing is one, design is one, editing is one, the different types of editing, production, distribution, pre-launch, launch, post-launch. These are all some of the 10 facets, and I do cover those. The next book is going to cover those exclusively and be called The Book Creation Cycle and just talk about book production. The book after that will talk about your platform growth, and the book after that about strategic growth. So it'll be a nice little set for anybody's career. But what I found with this book, and the reason I settled on the modern author, is one thing I've run into for 15 years are questions about publishing options, and questions you don't know you have right now if you're about to write or if you're writing your first book, because a lot has changed. I just turned 55, and I remember a lot of us have this idea, just as one example, of what a publishing deal means. And you usually think of, some company has swept me off my feet, given me a bunch of cash. They're flying me out to Hawaii on a book tour. It's all champagne and book appearances and money, movie deal, yada, 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 right? And that's one impression of a publishing deal. Things have changed so much. That's just one scenario now. That's sort of the traditional. You can do that yourself, by the way. You can put together your own tours and so on. Anything that was available to traditional publishing is available to self-publishing today, anything. And you can do it yourself. You can hire somebody to help, or you can hire an agency that'll actually flat out do it. But so this book is meant to get you up to speed, to catch everybody up, to find out what definitions you need to clarify in a new day. And that will, it not only helps you move forward, it protects you from some of the pitfalls. I've had clients come tell me I was offered a publishing deal, and then I find out they have to pay $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 up front for that publishing deal. That's not exactly, I mean, it could be a valuable package, I don't know, without seeing it, but you can do it for less, and you got to be very careful about what's involved when you invest your money like that. So the modern author is just what it says. It makes you a modern author. It takes you to where you understand how things have changed. I actually touch on, it was an opportunity for me to talk about the last 15 years. When I got into self-publishing, the ebook was only about 5 years old. It was still kind of a new thing. Amazon's entrance into digital publishing was a big disruptor. And traditional publishing did not like it at first. And very interesting, I was kind of ready to make observations about that because I'd come out of real estate where something similar had just happened. There was a lot of disruption back then. And because of technology and different business models, and looking back, and the internet, and looking back, I see some of those changes stuck, and a lot of them did not, which was also very interesting. So this book is meant to bring you up to speed as kind of a primer. It'd be a great book to read while you're writing your book. Great book to read before you hire anybody, before you spend a penny, and a great book to get you established as what I call a modern author. In fact, that's the name of my show. I'm following your model, and I've got a show called The Modern Author, where I interview authors here and there as well. So we'll have to get you on there as a guest.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Rodney. Right now, let's get all the information for self-publishing people, authors, the modern authors, and even if those people don't consider them modern, still all your techniques and tips will be helpful. But let's understand a bit about the common mistakes about this new self publishers that they should avoid, because many a times you have everything in your hand. As you said, that is, self-publishing provides you with everything that traditional publishing does have, and but yes, there's hard work, but sometimes you may just think, okay, everything is at my hand, and you still continue to make those mistakes. A few things that one, self-publisher should avoid in today's time.
Sure. Well, the term publisher, for example, is probably the first thing that comes to mind because that's changed so wildly. Uh, a lot of us have that old impression. It's an office in a high rise in Manhattan, and they make a decision as to what books get published and what don't. And this might be an old idea now. Even younger people might be used to having self-publishing around, but nonetheless, there's still a great variation in publishers. There are traditional publishers on one end. On the other extreme would be someone pure self-publishing who does everything on their own. And then you've got all kinds of options in between now. You've got a whole gradient of different options. You've got what's called a hybrid publisher, which might be a step off of the traditional publishing. And they would do some things for a fee, or they would charge less of a percentage of your royalties, but provide less. And then as you get a little closer to self-publishing, you'd have what's called a service publisher, which you could technically call me and what I've been doing for 15 years. But I never wanted to have publisher in my title because I didn't want to confuse anybody as to what to expect. I was a collaborator and a author services provider. A service publisher basically does what I do. They take you through the steps and guide you for even less of a royalty and maybe more of an upfront fee. It's more work for hire, as they say, but they'll get you through everything it takes to get your book created and then actually published on the platforms. And then where they all part ways generally to a large degree is when you get into the platform growth and the development and the strategic growth, like publicity and things. And that is something that I've finally been completely through now and have an understanding of a very clear understanding as to how self-publishers can do those final two stages for themselves, or create in-house publicity, or create your platform, understand what your platform is because it's your business, and go from there. So I have a whole recurring theme in The Modern Author on definitions, because writing doesn't mean just writing with a pen anymore. It doesn't mean typing alone anymore. It can include dictating and recording. You can write while you're on a treadmill or in your car. You can, there are many ways to write, and AI is starting to morph that as well today. So writing, publishing, a lot of your basic definitions have changed. And if you don't know, you can be taken advantage of, which is one of the biggest things I'm trying to prevent. I really think, if I boil it all down, I really find it kind of sacred that somebody would want to write a book, that somebody would have the courage and the concern for their society to share either some expertise they've gained over the years or something they've survived or whatever it is, whether it's a business book or a memoir. If you are willing to do that, I think that's commendable, and it's to be taken seriously and regarded seriously and done well. And that's why I wrote the book, to encourage more, not just more books, but more books that are extremely well done, because that's when they will find a place in the hearts of people, hearts and minds of people. And if you're prepared for that, I also want you to have a good experience, because I want you to do it again, especially if you want to do it again.
Absolutely, absolutely, Rodney. So you talk about, solve problems for authors, self-publishers. You talk about their challenges. What about your challenge in writing this book? Any particular challenge that you remember when writing this book?
Yes, it's a good question. Thank you. I think it's a funny question because as soon as I got into self-publishing, I wanted to write a book about self-publishing, which was 15 years ago. So, and I think 14 years ago when I finally got the book written. Along the way, I always had an eye to writing this book and what's going to be the series now, because I wanted to share that right away. So ended up I had to go through 14 years of learning and experience to get to where I'm very proud of the book that I put out and the ones that are coming out. And what's funny is the way I told a client recently, you write books the way I do. For all those years, whenever I had an idea or quote, something I thought, oh, that should be included, I might sit down and just flow and write a chapter, or I might just make a comment or send myself a little note. And these little things added up, and I just kept throwing them into a file, a Word document. And when I finally sat down to write this, which is probably a 30, 40, maybe a 50,000 word book, I had 300,000 words. So it was a quick exercise in what we call development and review. And I had to kind of find out how things would fit organizationally inside the book. And I went through a really cool process. I got it narrowed down. Some things I took out for future books. Some things were not necessary at all. Some things were repeated, and kind of crafted it. And that's it was a quick, hard lesson in what we call development, editorial development or developmental editing, to hone that down, make it concise, make it interesting. Hopefully, I tell a lot of stories in there. Hopefully, it takes a reader along and it flows. And I guess I found that it finally did that for me, because one of the best tips when you get to a point with your draft is to change your mindset and read your own book as a reader and not as a writer. And it can be kind of amazing when you first do that with your own book, and then do that several times, not forever, but until you feel a diminishing returns on your reviews of your own book. So that was probably, I tell that story once in a while. It had bloated into a 300,000 word file.
Absolutely, absolutely. So always one should read their book like a reader and not just like a writer. That is where they will get a lot of perspective. So this particular book, now about the future, anything more coming? You mentioned about one more book coming very soon.
Yes, there's another book coming out very soon called The Book Creation Cycle, which is, I actually touch on all 10 of these stages in The Modern Author. This is going to be an expansion on it, more of a hands-on guide to actually get your book created. That'll be the next book. The book after that, which is kind of written in my head, is on platform growth, where, and then another book, which will be I guess a fourth book in the series, will be about in-house publicity, professional publicity, strategic growth. So if you look at it, a great way to summarize it, even in more generic terms, is you've got your basis, which would be this book or book 0. And then you've got your product, whatever product you're coming up with. In our case, it's a book. Then you've got your platform, which, if you have any other kind of product, that could mean an online store or a physical brick and mortar store that people can go to. You need a venue in which to sell your product, but also meet and grow clientele, and that's your platform. And then the final stage is the publicity. You can actually, as a self-published author, either do it very casually, your promotion. You can set things up on automatic, or you can roll your sleeves up, and that'll be another book. So I finally, after 15 years, because the first 10 or so years I focused exclusively on book production, and found it was very hard to find other professionals who could, at an affordable price, help authors build their platforms and sell their books and find ways that their books sell. And I finally kind of cracked that code. And I want to include all of this in, I would say legacy, but it's a package, a series of books that will guide someone through the entire process and give you a good basis for a career as an author.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, for those people who want to know more about self-publishing, more about what you do, how you do, what is the best way for them to connect with you, get this book, get other books that are in the pipeline?
Always my website, which is just rodneymiles.com. In fact, the Modern Author is free as a PDF. I give it away free, and I'm starting to do that with all of my books. If you're okay with the PDF version, it's free. You just come to the website, you can get it absolutely free. You can also buy the ebook or hardcover or, other editions, but that's something I want to make sure I do so that everybody's covered.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this is for the audience today. As you can see, we have explored the journey of Rodney Miles and his book, The Book Dude's Guide to Self-Publishing, the Modern Author, and the inspirations behind his writing, the way he have written, the challenges he has faced. So if you are intrigued, don't forget to grab a copy of his book so that you can, make a difference to yourself as well as to him also, who has written with so much of an effort. So that with this, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with fellow book lovers. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories from incredible authors like Rodney Miles. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.